Hello, everybody. My name's James. Welcome to another clash of the correspondents. And on today's COTC, we're looking forward to a London derby in game week 15. Firstly, let me introduce you to our Fulham correspondent. It's Lewis James. How are you, Lewis?
I'm good. Yourself?
Yeah, not too bad. Thank you, buddy. Tottenham haven't ruined my day yet. That's probably still to come tonight. And our Arsenal correspondent is naturally smiling after last night. It's Adam Pritchard. How are you, Adam?
Yeah, doing good. It's always nice to dispatch of a mid-table level side, so get that one out of the way.
All right, go on then. Just since you've done that, we'll start with you. What did you make of Manchester United last night? Just briefly.
Um, I feel like obviously Amarim has talked about, and you've mentioned on the podcast before as well, how he's almost, well, he hasn't said this explicitly, but it feels like he's using these early games to kind of like get a feel for the squad. Obviously, he hasn't had a significant amount of time there, so I mean, it's obviously far too early to judge him in any kind of like material way. And they were in such a state of kind of almost anonymity under Ten Hag. Like any flicker of progress would be like so quickly wiped out by kind of a bad performance or kind of glaring tactical inadequacies. I don't think there was as much of that when we played them last night. But yeah, like I say, it's very difficult to kind of get too much of a read of them at the moment. The players are still the players, and a lot of them have been kind of galvanized, I think, a little bit, like they care a bit more. I think they just looked very disengaged under Ten Hag. So I think that's obviously a positive difference, but that would be the case no matter who came in. Like it's not, I don't think it's Amarim necessarily who's motivating them any more than any other manager would.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with all that. Anyway, but let's not talk about United anymore. Yourselves, Lewis, and we're obviously recorded pretty much kind of as you'll hear this, I guess, for many of you, Thursday morning. You are 12th at the moment. I sense frustration from you, having I've just had a little chat before we started recording. If you beat Brighton this evening, though, you go to sixth. Irrespective of the result tonight, you'll actually go back to third for expected points according to Understat's model. This has been a good season so far, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean it's been good. I think a lot of people thought would struggle when João Palhinha left at the start in the summer. So it's definitely been better than what it has been. There's always progress under Silva, but like you say, it's just frustrating. Like a couple of results, West Ham conceding late, not turning up against Villa, not turning up against Wolves. And then so it's just like you say, frustrating, but. The progress is there, and everyone can see that we're a very good side now, and no one wants to play with, I would presume anyway.
No, I don't think Fulham's not a fixture that you particularly look forward to for opponents. I spoke about this quite a bit before. Obviously, you played my team at the weekend. I'm very impressed with you again. It's quite clear on Monday that I think you deserve to win that game. Is there a kind of a growing sense within the team now? You've alluded to Paulinho. I think go back a year ago, we thought, well, Fulham can't play without Paulinho. You've obviously learnt to do that. You had that two-game winning spell against United and ironically Brighton, who
Right.
you play again tonight. Has the team very much learnt to just move on from him now?
Yeah, I think we just play totally different. I think when you have someone like Palhinha, I think you can, because he's so reliable, you can sort of just leave him there and he'll sweep up. Whereas now, I think we keep the ball more. We've brought in Anderson. Even Sanderberg is good on the ball. So I just feel like we've evolved into a different team than we were when we had Zhao. Because I don't think, for all the good things Zhao was, I don't think he had the ability to maybe progress the ball up the pitch like Berg can. So I just think Silva's knew he was going to lose him. And I think he's just identified targets to make we're a different team so that we're not as reliant on the number six to be such a ball winning midfielder.
What's the solution tonight? Obviously, Sasa Lukic is suspended.
Yeah.
Tom Kenny also suspended. Andreas Pereira, internal suspension or not?
Well, according to Silva, no, he'll be back in contention. But if it was me, I would just let him rot. If it was me, I would play Iwobi in the eight. Silva said many times that Iwobi prefers to play in the middle as opposed to out wide. So I would probably play Berg and Iwobi with Smith Rowe and then probably Wilson because Wilson probably deserves a start. He's been banging on the door. So if you were going to start Wilson, I think it would probably be tonight. But
Okay.
knowing Silva and he loves Pereira, he might just bring Pereira back in.
So
But
what's happened for those that don't know?
so there was a article that went out, I think it was last Saturday, where it basically said that Pereira was disappointed that he didn't get a move to Marseille done, and he was bigging up De Zerbi, and that obviously Forest had interest in him, and unfortunately nothing materialised, so he's just going to wait until January to see what happened. Um, but obviously no one could confirm it because it was a Brazilian interview he did, and then as the game was going on Sunday, Pereira put a statement out saying that it wasn't true, that it had been misinterpreted from the English press. So the Brazilian company that journalist that he did the interview with just released the video footage with the translation just to prove that he wasn't lying and that it was actually exactly what he said.
Right.
So to me, it's he's made his bed, he can lie in it. You know what I mean? No one's
So,
bigger than the club.
so he'll probably move on once we hit January then. Every
Yeah,
chance, I guess.
hopefully.
Hopefully. Okay. You'd rather he didn't play for you.
Yeah.
Interesting. I can understand that if you've got a player that sounds like he wants out. I completely get that, particularly when you're kind
And he's
of
not.
evolving as a team.
He's just not as he's not as good as he thinks he is. Like if you look at his goals and assists this season, he's got one goal, no assists. He takes every set piece. We haven't scored from over 100 corners this season. He takes all of them. Even if like you look at like a Adama Traore, he scored an assist. Nelson, Iwobi, Smith Rowe, like they're all putting in the numbers, and he's just consistently not putting in them numbers. Yeah, I don't think like I always joke that if he was he's basically just a Brazilian Harrison Reed. Work rate only gets you so far. You've got to have a bit of quality, and if his name was um Andy Percy, he wouldn't be playing for Fulham if he was English. So that's my opinion on him, which isn't a very good one.
Brazilian Brazilian Harrison Reed's quite interesting. Adam's team never scores from corners, as we're well aware. I see, Adam, you've made a bid this morning for Tommy Tonks.
Very good. I'm going to assume that's some sort of outdated reference that I don't understand, but
He plays for Tamworth and he takes long throws. Just to give you a
oh,
different
okay.
armory to your set
Okay.
piece.
Yeah, yeah,
Don't
yeah.
worry, he's going to bury my team in roughly just over 4 weeks, I should imagine, in the FA Cup third round. I guess, Adam, Fulham's your second team, is it?
You say that somewhat sarcastically, but it's nice. Like I kind of feel like no one really dislikes Fulham because and this is probably irritating for Fulham fans to hear, but like there's nothing offensive about them. There's nothing like the ground isn't like kind of great, but there's something kind of quite niche and quaint about it that makes it like a kind of a nice day out. Never really had too many kind of dislikable players that I can think of. Um, and obviously now, yeah, there's kind of a little bit of an Arsenal connection there too. And they're all doing very, very well, and they're all kind of none of them left Arsenal with any like obviously Reece Nelson's still like technically an Arsenal player, but none of them left Arsenal or joined Fulham with any kind of like ill will. I think like when Iwobi obviously left for Everton, it was a great sum of money, and I think everyone was kind of like, yeah, this is right for his career. It's the same thing with Smith Rowe, obviously. He really needed this move, and I'm glad it's working out well for him. And same thing for Reece Nelson. He's always been a very kind of secure player, but I think he has sometimes, at least at Arsenal, sometimes looked a bit like the pressure got to him at times, and he kind of was a little bit within himself. And all he's really needed is like a consistent run of games to kind of like bring the talent that is definitely in there out of him, which it's
He
nice
was
to see him
very
getting.
good on Sunday at my
Yeah, yeah,
place.
yeah,
He
yeah.
was
Off
really
one
good.
moment for the goal.
Um, where there was this mad control he did off his back as well that I
Yeah.
Mm,
think people have obviously seen this week, which even I went, oh wow, like shit. I think
mm.
it kind of justified the confidence that your team was playing with on the day, Lewis. Is he a player you'd like to sign permanently from Arsenal?
Yeah, I think we definitely will. I mean, it's a shame that obviously because he was basically on his way to Ipswich when we sort of hijacked the deal. So there wasn't really any time to get like
Wasn't
a
that because you had someone else was in your medical room and he was crying and he left or something?
yeah.
Was it
Well,
someone from Leon?
our medical team were out in France, and he sort of ran away from the medical. So he'd be playing in the second division in France next year. So that sucks to be him. But yeah, it would have been nice to have an optional fee in the deal, but there just wasn't enough time. So I think it just depends on the money, you know. If he does too well, then obviously Arsenal are going to want more money. So
Well, that's the thing. Like, I imagine any option we would have included at that time probably would have been sort of like 10 to 15 million. Like, I don't think it would have been too much, because we were not desperately trying to offload him, but kind of certainly the sum of it's just gone. We needed to kind of free up a budget on the wage side, as much as anything else. So yeah, I would imagine he's probably going to go for sort of like 20-ish million
It's not.
if we sell
You,
him
you
next
you
summer.
don't foresee a future at Arsenal then for him, Adam?
I don't think he will want that. I think in his mind, ideally he would have wanted to kind of like stay and get more chances at Arsenal, but I just get the sense that if he can kind of consistently stay in Fulham's starting 11, he's just not going to get that at Arsenal. Like, I don't think for him, I think he might see it as somewhat of a bit of a backward step. Like, I'd love to have him back because at the moment we're kind of filling that spot with Raheem Sterling, who's like fine, he's okay, but he's not doing anything that Reece Nelson couldn't. But no, I suspect he'll move on in the summer.
Was the football equivalent there of saying that I'm not angry, I'm disappointed. He's okay. It was a really nice way of saying you don't rate Raheem Sterling very
It's
much, Adam.
it's one of those things that I don't know how to, it's difficult to kind of describe. I'm sure anyone who's supported a team that Sterling has played for can like relate to the experience of like you see so much of what is good about him, and you've seen kind of his like back catalogue, of like history of like playing in the league, and he's been like a great player. And then you watch him and you think, well, I've seen you run past people before. I don't know why you can't do that. It's not like he's lost a lot of pace. Obviously, he's lost a bit. He was never kind of particularly precise in tight areas, but he always managed to like weave around people. And he's just like so hesitant on the ball. Um,
he's
yeah.
not used to playing for Stoke though, is he? So
No, that's true. Maybe we need to get him in the gym and kind of work on his long throws.
different
That's something
mentality.
we can
Yeah.
get used
Probably,
for. That.
it probably doesn't help him that when he plays, normally playing in place of Saka, right?
Yeah, that's the
That
problem for
probably
anyone
doesn't
who kind
help.
of, well, that's the problem for anyone on that right side is like they've got one of the best wingers in the world to kind of live up to. And you see everything Saka does is so efficient, and Sterling is almost the antithesis of that. He's very inefficient essentially in his movement and kind of how, like I was saying, like how hesitant he is. Whereas Saka, everything, even when he does his kind of little body feints and kind of stops with the ball, everything is kind of very precise and calculated. And I don't know whether it's a confidence thing with Sterling or whether because obviously Arteta worked with him before, so he's seen him on the training ground loads and loads, so knows the ability that he has, which was why I was relatively optimistic when we signed him. I thought, great, we're not paying all of his wages. Experienced player should add a lot to that kind of bench option. But now it's like not I don't want to see him starting in the Premier League, but I foresaw that as an option before he signed, and now it's kind of a bit like, no, we kind of just need to keep playing Saka every week.
Yeah, and I mean, if he was going to play on the left, I guess Martinelli and Trossard are both ahead of him anyway, right?
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And even now you've got players like, obviously it's not his natural position, but Nwaneri coming off the bench can kind of fill a job, I think, in those wide roles as well.
He'll be
Yeah.
at Fulham in 5 years, so it's fine.
I think he's more likely to be at Real Madrid in 5 years than Fulham, but
I'm not sure about that, Adam.
I think he's one of the best Hale end talents I've
This is
seen.
Oh,
what
sorry, I thought we
happened
were
with
talking
Smith
about
Rowe.
Sterling.
Oh no, I mean unless he's kind of gonna offer to be the kit man or something like that, he's not going to Real Madrid.
No, Ethan Nwaneri, I think, has got a very good chance of obviously breaking in and being part of your team. It's probably more likely, yeah, he'd be playing for you and Odegaard would be back at Real Madrid, or yeah, Nwaneri's gone somewhere like that. Yeah, I quite agree with that statement. This set piece stuff, Adam. I'm going to answer this for you because I've seen a lot over the last 12 hours, people memeing and saying, set piece FC and stuff like that. Right, I'm envious of it. I'll tell you truthfully. it's becoming a pain in the arse because not only you're a very good team, it's like you're the best at set pieces as well. How important is this element of the game to you?
I think it feels like getting free goals in a way because previously, obviously, Arsenal, certainly for a lot of the Emirates era, have had small technicians rather than kind of big imposing figures. And now, not only are we obviously very kind of I don't know if ingenuity is the right way to describe it, but we clearly practice set pieces a lot. We've got lots of different routines, but we've also got lots of big players. And it's kind of like sounds simplistic to say, but the efficacy of those like corners are like enhanced so much more when you've got like Declan Rice, you've got Saliba, you've got Gabriel, you can have a Calafiori in there or a Ben White when he's fit. You can have a Marino in there as well. So you've got like four, five, six players, kind of 6-1 and above, and that helps so much. And yeah, obviously it helps in the attacking realm because times when we've struggled a little bit from a creative perspective, or when teams are kind of sitting deep and trying to stifle us, stifle our right hand side, which is obviously where we kind of produce a lot of our chances from. We've always got that threat of the corners, and like you've seen it with away fans obviously it happened at the North London derby. I'm sure everyone's seen the clip of like the Spurs fans turning away when we get a corner because it's like, oh, obviously that's a bit of like playing up for the
I've not
cameras and
watched
a
any
bit
of it
of a
back, Adam, so no, I've not seen
no,
that
really,
clip actually.
really.
No,
I
no.
have a few times. I can give you a play
Okay,
by
don't
play
send
on
it to me, cheers.
it. But yeah, now we have a reputation that I think there was a risk kind of at the start of this season towards the tail end of last season when it was becoming a real thing. I worried, is this going to get like over analyzed to the point where everyone is now watching out for it and it kind of nullifies the threat a little bit. But I think a combination of the fact that we have signed more tall players and the delivery from the players is getting much better. We've got kind of a variety of takers as well. So it's not always as simple to say, right, it's going to be Saka. So it's going to kind of be drilled in low to kind of the mid part of the box. You can get Declan Rice, you can kind of loop it to the back post. So it's it's really, really important. And it's yeah, it gets memed a little bit, but I don't really care.
I think the key as well, and I think in terms of the change where it's gone up a level, that consistency on the delivery now,
Mm.
you know where it's coming. I mean, take the first goal last night. That delivery is so good, and because of the sheer volume of players in that area, it just needs to touch, which Timber gets. I'm not quite sure how you defend that.
No,
You've
well,
got to hope that the person in front wins the header, essentially.
yeah, exactly. And like I was saying, it's made so much harder when we've got so many different threats. Like obviously Gabriel's getting the majority of the goals, but if you put two men on Gabriel, then you're leaving someone like Saliba or kind of one of our other players free in the box. So yeah.
Lewis, you mentioned you're not good at attacking corners. You're only good at defending them.
Well, we weren't very good at the start of the season, and then Anderson came in and sort of steadied that ship. Now, obviously, Anderson's not here, so no, I'm going to say no.
Okay, great. Where do we stand with Anderson at the moment, Lewis? How long are we expecting him out for?
It was a bit of a weird one because Silva's had a few games last week, but obviously we had 3 games in 7 days, so by that logic, he should be back for the Liverpool game. But so I think Liverpool away, he should come back, but if
Okay,
not, probably maybe we.
that's game week 16. Adam, what do we know this morning about Gabriel and Calafiori? Obviously didn't play last night.
No, well, obviously there was kind of talk that going into the West Ham game that Gabriel hadn't trained or had been in kind of partial training and they wasn't too sure about his fitness. So my suspicion is it was kind of a maybe a little bit of over optimism that Gabriel was really pushing to play, and then obviously it kind of didn't work out for the Man United game. And I think we suspected, especially with someone like Calafiori, who had kind of come into the team, got injured, and then come back, that he was going to get a rest eventually. I haven't seen anything that they're kind of serious injuries. Um, but yeah, I mean, it was obviously it's a luxury to be able to kind of rotate with the depth that we now find ourselves in. Especially for someone like Kivior, who I think a lot of people were maybe skeptical is probably the right way to phrase it. Not too sure that he would be able to like step up long term, and there were rumors that he was going to leave in the summer for go back to Italy. So it's obviously great to see him kind of being able to step in for Gabriel. But I don't think
Yeah,
it's a
I
serious
guess there
injury.
was concerns with Kivior, I think particularly after the Bournemouth game. caused a bit of
Yeah,
alarm.
yeah, and there was, I mean, it was like I think when we played Forest at the back end, Forest the season before last, I think he was kind of came into the side and was looked a bit sketchy, and he's never really nailed down whether he's going to be a left back or is he going to be a centre back. So yeah, it's obviously good to see him kind of finding a bit of form and getting some praise as well.
This quote from Arteta last night: Gabriel was a big risk to play against Manchester United because he felt something against West Ham. Sunday is going to be a possibility with Riccardo Calafiori as well. Let's see how he reacts. I think that should have been they react, but I guess both are in with a chance for Sunday. Let's play a game and I'll start this one. Who you got coming off the bench for Gabriel this week? Adam, I'll start. It's Wout Faes for me. You?
Non-existent because I don't own him.
Weird. Lewis?
Uh, it's currently Pedro Neto, but I haven't done my team, so it'll probably be Lewis Hall.
Oh, and no, I mean this week. Who you got coming off the bench this week?
Oh, this week. We're in the middle of a game week, I forget. Uh, yeah, Lewis Hall still.
So no one's got anything off the bench for Gabriel, so no one's lucky enough with Morgan Rogers there. But everyone's starting with three at the back, so it's 1 or 2 pointers off the bench, isn't it? So
Yeah.
Adam, why don't you own?
Um, because I've had so many other issues in my team where it's been adding that kind of Arsenal defender would be a bit of a luxury, and it's I don't currently own any premium defenders. Um, so it would be kind of shifting around funds into a position where, like, obviously I think he's a great pick, but I was kind of more focused on making sure I had that Palmer, Saka, Salah three in midfield. Obviously, I went with Isak up front, which has obviously kind of worked out last night, but beforehand wasn't looking so good. So it's more just about where I've kind of distributed the funds in my side, and I've got Raya as well. So
Okay, so you do have some
yeah,
Arsenal defensive
yeah,
coverage, yeah. So you've got Ray and what, just Saka from Arsenal.
yeah, yeah.
What you thinking? Because over my ticker, next five, your top. These fixtures are good. I think the toughest one is the next one actually. Fulham away, then Everton at home, Palace away, Ipswich at home, and Brentford away. Are you looking to add or not?
Um, I think if I was looking to add, it would be a defender. I don't like. I think Odegaard's obviously like great, and I kind of wish I had the spot in my team for him. But just the way I'm set up, and I think the way a lot of people are set up at the moment with kind of that that three premium in midfield, it kind of doesn't really leave space for Odegaard at a slightly awkward price point and not really like a guarantee of like points every week. So yeah, I think I would look to add a second defensive option rather than a second attacking option.
Okay. And which would be the one target for you? What's the one you're looking at thinking, shit, that's the one I want?
I mean, Gabriel's the obvious one, but I think that's partly as much because of the ownership as anything else. Like I think I don't necessarily. I think it's relatively even in terms of like the premium that you're paying for him over Timber. Like obviously he's got the added goal threat, but with kind of Calafiori maybe less certain of his minutes if he's kind of not struggling with an injury, but there's obviously something lingering in the background with his fitness. I think there's like no concern until Ben White is back that Timber's minutes are going to be threatened. I don't think anyway.
Your spacing is good over Christmas. We've covered this previously. Like the Ipswich games are Friday night, and I think you play Palace like 5 or 6 days before that, and then
Mm,
you don't play Brentford till the Wednesday or New Year's Day. So even over that period, the spacing is not too bad at all. But I guess with easier fixtures, could there be one where Arteta goes, actually, do you know what? You did have a bad ACL injury. I'm going to leave you out. That keeps playing on my mind in terms of a caution. Arteta's spoken about this as well, about kind of giving caution on Timber because obviously he had such a bad injury.
mm. Yeah, 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 no, that I mean that's certainly a factor, and we do have options more so on the kind of left hand side, um, rather than the right hand side. But I mean, I would, and I know, like you're saying, the spacing is okay. I would more see that as a, a kind of almost like a post-Christmas thing. I know obviously his like load management has got to be kind of carefully monitored, like you're saying, coming off the back of a serious injury, but I don't know if we necessarily have like the luxury to really rotate him too much. Like there could be the odd game where he sits out, but without Ben White and Tomiyasu kind of being perennially injured, or like not certain on his fitness, it's like it becomes a thing where you're shifting Partey to right back, and then you're kind of maybe unbalancing that kind of right hand side dynamic that with Ben White or with Timber is such a kind of focal point of our build up play. So I'm not too worried. None more so than I would be for any of the other players, really.
If Ben White was fit now, who do you think would be first choice at right back?
Um, at right back, I think it would be Ben White, but I think Timber would be playing left back. I think I would put Timber over Calafiori, who's kind of like started off, I think, very well, but I think he's kind of like you saw against West Ham with a couple of giveaways and some positional aspects that he's a young kid, so he's like got time on his side, but I think Timber looks kind of the more secure defensive prospect of the two.
Okay. Lewis, what Arsenal have you got at the moment?
Um, Raya, Gabriel, and I've got Odegaard, to be fair.
There's nothing wrong with Van Odegaard, mate. I mean, it's just that the U comes at not having Saka. Is that bothering you that you don't have him at the moment or not?
Not really, because I sort of started off the season really well in FPL, and then game week 6, I brought the big man in, and I brought him in for Cole Palmer's 4 goals. So basically, from that point on, my seasons went downhill to the point
Yeah.
where my differential team's only 3 points behind my main team.
Nice. I
Yeah,
think Haaland has got as many points since you brought as many returns since you brought him in as I think Saka got at the weekend. I think.
yeah, it's bad.
I mean, it's
I'm just
incredible.
being stubborn now, though.
I only picked Saka for the comparison there, not to just rub it in about Mo Salah's returns is stupid at the moment. Different podcast. Are you probably going to continue to go without Saka then?
Well, I'm not going to say never, but I just feel like everyone's now off Haaland, and now I'm like so far behind. It just
Just going
almost
to stick
feels
with it.
like I have to just keep it, because it's turned into a differential. So I'm just absorbing the pain.
All right. We've got a group open for our patrons as well. If you want to join that, mate, just let us know. Adam, if someone was asking about paying the extra for Saka over Odegaard, i.e. if someone's on wild card now, though, do you just play it for Saka? Has that got to be done?
Yeah, I think it's pretty simple. I think both hit like decent obviously decent options. It's kind of a bit facetious to say, but Saka is only going to like increase in ownership. Like I think he's already at is he 40%? He might be getting near there. And yeah, you've seen over the recent weeks what he can do. I think it would be. I don't see how you're wild carding and you're not putting him in, essentially.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think the stat I'd said earlier in the week was prior to this week, 70% of the top 100k now had Saka, Palmer, and Salah.
Mm.
So, I mean, that's as a combination. So the ownership in the top 100k is even obviously higher than that. If you were on wildcard, Adam, I presume you would go free Arsenal at the moment. What would be your favoured three?
Um, I think it would be Saka, Raya, and Gabriel. I think probably. I
Is it
think that
still rare over Timber for you?
yeah, that's more or that is as much to do with on wildcard. I would just want to set up, and what I did when I wildcarded earlier in the season, I just set up with a goalkeeper that I didn't have to worry about. Like I know Arsenal were kind of going through a run where the clean sheets just weren't coming, but I never really looked at that spot too much just because I didn't want to worry about it. And there will always be kind of a flavor of the month defender. Um, I feel like if you want to stick with Gabriel throughout the season, that's fine, and if you want to stick with Raya throughout the season, that's fine. I would think with Timber, yeah, it's possibly other alternatives are better in that spot.
I think if I was going now, I'd go Timber over Raya, I think, for the third one.
Is
Just
that
purely
because the fourth
Raya
five
can't
goal?
get the return that Timber got last night. It's as simple as that, basically.
No, no, that's true. That's true. I think it's like look, they're both great options. I just think that the 4-5 goalkeepers they just always prove to be a minefield in FPL. Like I know I can never pick the right one, so I just kind of want to take that decision out of my hands,
I
essentially.
I literally did a piece yesterday, pretty much saying for some of our patrons that if I was on wildcard, I probably would have gone for Sanchez this week, who didn't play for Chelsea last night. I think kind of
Exactly.
alludes to your point. We haven't spoken about Kai Havertz.
No.
No
From an
interest?
FPL perspective,
Yeah.
uh, again, it's the same thing with Odegaard. It's like they're not bad picks, and obviously they're very good players. It's just finding the spot in your side for them. I think I would find it quite difficult. I think, see, kind of speaking off the back of Jackson not playing, but I think a lot of the movement to him was like completely justified, and I think Jackson's is he 1 million cheaper, or he's definitely cheaper than Havertz.
No, very
So
similar now, Adam.
oh, has he gone back up? Is he 7.9 now? And Havertz is what?
Jackson's 8.2 in price, Havertz
Oh, okay.
7.9, so pretty close.
Oh, okay, fair enough. But yeah, they're at a similar enough price point where it's like, are you going to go to Havertz over Jackson? I don't really know if people would. I think it's just about finding the spot in the team, and I don't know anyone who would be able to have that kind of luxury. And when you've got the defensive assets that we talked about earlier, and Saka, as we were saying, is kind of a necessity at this point. Um, it feels like a luxury, or that certainly I don't think I can fit into my team.
Six attacking returns for Havertz, um, having basically played every minute bar the Nottingham Forest home game when he was rested. It has been 90 minutes every game in 13 games. Six returns in 13 games. Is that enough? And I'm not talking about fancy. I just mean as Arsenal's number nine at the moment. Does that matter or not?
Um, yes and no. I think you have to kind of factor in obviously like the extreme amount of like energy that he puts into all of his performances. Like he's not, I don't think he's ever a player that is going to be purely judged or should be purely judged on his like goal return because he does a lot more for the team. And also a large spell of that, or of this season, obviously we've been without like our primary creative force. So that's not just impacted him, that's impacted Martinelli, that's impacted Trossard. I think if you're the goal output in general from those three, I think you could look at critically, but I think there are kind of mitigating factors that kind of make it more understandable. And also the fact that I think Havertz has a lot of goodwill from Arsenal fans. Obviously, the the public perception when he signed, and from a lot of Arsenal fans, was like kind of understandably skeptical, I think. And he turned that around so drastically within a relatively short space of time. But I think he's kind of got a decent amount of credit in the bank from his like heart, his passion, his commitment to where I think people are they'll give him a bit of grace.
Okay. 11 forwards who've scored more than Havertz so far this season. Raul Jimenez is not one of them, Lewis, but forgivable, particularly when Rodrigo Muniz started the season. I saw you say to someone you think there's every chance that Muniz will start tonight against Brighton. Is that how you still feel?
Uh, yeah. I mean, I've got no evidence to suggest it. It's more just a gut feeling. I think Jimenez is 32 or 33 now, and no disrespect to Brighton at home, but uh, I think Silva would prefer to have Jimenez for the Arsenal game, and I'm not sure if Jimenez can do 3 games in 7 days. Like we're not like yourselves or Arsenal that are used to doing that sort of workload. It's normally just a game a week, so. Um, yeah, I just think it's a better fixture. I mean, if you look at like Brighton or Arsenal or Liverpool, you probably want Jimenez for your Arsenal and Liverpool. Um,
You say that though, but we've seen it with both players where they've got in the team, got in a chance, scored, and then stayed in the team for forthcoming games. Like if Muniz played tonight, got a goal and assist or something, he could play
yeah,
against
it doesn't
Arsenal
get
again on
caught.
Sunday, couldn't he?
No, yeah, yeah. I mean, that would definitely happen. I think. I just don't think Jimenez has been as good recently as he has been maybe at this when he first came back in. The miss against Wolves from 2 yards out, which would have been another Robinson assist.
It was a
Um,
little unlucky because there was such a slight touch in front of him before that, wasn't there?
but yeah, I just I think Nunez will get back in the team at some point, even if it's just to rest Jimenez. Um, and today could be the game. I
I
mean,
think
Silva did talk about rotation in his press conference yesterday, so I think there's also likely that Castagna comes back in for maybe Tete,
okay.
and like I think Wilson could play depending on who he plays in the middle of the pitch.
With Jimenez, it feels like you could kind of create a narrative either way. He hasn't scored in five, but over
Yeah,
the last two, the games against Wolves and Tottenham, he's had an XG of sort of circa 1.3. That's good.
yeah.
So, what would your advice be to people who own Raul Jimenez at the moment? I guess with the upcoming fixtures now, with Arsenal, Liverpool next, no one is buying at this moment. What would you
No.
say to Jimenez owners?
Yeah, I would sell personally. I think I don't think he's on it enough to justify keeping him, and the fixtures also don't justify where you're in that position where you have to keep him. So I think you'd sell your João Pedro's or even someone like Delap, whose next few are pretty good, I believe.
Next couple, yeah, but then it gets tough for them as well.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I would sell. He's not. I know you say he's got good XG, but then I feel like that's sort of the story of Fulham season where, if we had a proper number nine who could finish the ball, then I think we'd be even better than where we are.
You think he's not good enough? Is that fair to say?
I don't think he's good enough for a whole season. Him and Munoz are very streaky, and I think you need a consistent goal scorer up top.
Okay. Iwobi versus Smith Rowe, fantasy question. 0.1 between the two of them, 2 points between the two of them. Been a lot of focus on Smith Rowe this season, but Iwobi is the cheaper and scored a little bit more. Again, probably not investment for now, but like from Southampton at home in game week 17, I
Yeah.
think people will be looking at Fulham assets again. What's your preference between the two of them?
I prefer Iwobi. He's been my player of the season, I think. Um, he's just very versatile. I think you watched him against City and he's playing right wing back. Then he's playing on the left, he's playing on the right. I think he'll play as the eight tonight, but we'll see. Um, I just think Smith Rowe, like if you look at his returns, it's not fully at home, but a lot of his big returns are at home. And I know he scored it. He got an assist at Everton. But I,
Scored at
I think,
Palace as well.
yeah, well, he was unlucky with the second one as well, but that was an Iwobi assist. I'm not sure on Smith Rowe. He's a very good player, but I feel like some games that he can't go missing. Some games he's not up to the intensity of
He's
what
only
we
returned
need.
in two games since game week five, Emile Smith Rowe.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I think,
And they're both away games, actually. Everton and Crystal Palace.
yeah, well, I mean, the Everton game, he was really, really bad in. He just had that one moment of brilliance where he dribbled past four players and passed it to Iwobi, ironically. Um, but even in that game, you wouldn't say he was very good. So I think I would go Iwobi, way more consistent. And I also think Iwobi will play 90 minutes every week, basically. Um, whereas Smith Rowe is still sometimes getting that early break.
Yeah, I have to say, he wasn't bad at Tottenham at the weekend, but there were others that stood out more, actually. The wide players, particularly,
Yeah.
like Iwobi. It's always true. I just wonder if that kind of flexibility in Iwobi, in the sense that he can play multiple different positions, might actually count against him from a fantasy perspective. You could shove him into a double pivot, even if you wanted to in central midfield. I'm sure he would do a reasonable job in that position. That would be the one that really off-put me from that perspective. I think
Yeah, I
there's been
think.
a little bit of concern with Smith Rowe that he won't play certain away games, but then
mm,
he's Arsenal and Liverpool next, and that problem seems to go away definitely once you got the Chelsea derby out the way in game week 18.
Yeah, I think with Iwobi, when you're saying playing in a double pivot, Silva said numerous times this season that Iwobi wants to play centrally. So that's why I've got a feeling that he might try him out in the eight because it's not really when you watch Fulham, it's not really like a 6-8-10. It's more like a 6-8-8 or a 6-8, 8.5 sort of thing with Smith Rowe.
It's staggered positioning,
Yeah,
yeah.
so it's not can't say that Smith Rowe is playing higher up the pitch necessarily as say Lukic because you look at the games that we're normally playing, Lukic is just as high as Smith Rowe or he is the one that's pressing over Smith Rowe. So, and it's the same when Pereira's in the team. He's sort of, even though he's playing further back than Smith Rowe, he's still the trigger press for the team. So I think even if it will be played centrally, I think he would have chances. I just think he is the more confident player. I think Silva trusts him more, and I think confidence breeds
Okay.
returns.
Adam, what do you make of that analysis on Iwobi versus Smith Rowe as a fantasy question? You obviously know both players very well.
Yeah, and it's interesting to hear how kind of Iwobi's desire to play in the middle has kind of persisted because it felt like that was where he was destined to end up kind of when he started breaking into the Arsenal team. Like kind of Arsenal always had and a lot of teams do this to be fair, but it felt much more pronounced where as youngsters broke into the side, they would almost play on the wing as kind of like kind of as like a trial essentially. Like they would hone themselves out wide and then move to the centre, like it happened with Wilshere, it happened with Ramsey. It was even talked about, kind of happened a little bit with Oxlade-Chamberlain, but obviously injuries curtailed that. Um, I think it's interesting. I do think the analysis as far as Smith Rowe goes is fair, where he can feel like some games do drift by him a little bit, and I don't know how much of that is necessarily to do with him as a player and kind of how he operates, but also the role. I feel like the role he's been given, and like, correct me if I'm wrong, but the role he's been given almost allows him to do that. Like, I feel like when you're kind of partnered with other players or like you're in the same side as other players who are kind of more, um, I don't know, more energetic than Smith Rowe is, it's like Smith Rowe can sometimes be allowed almost to coast through games. I think if I had to pick one of them, I would probably pick Smith Rowe because I feel like his ceiling is probably higher.
I agree with that.
Um, but I think Iwobi's floor is probably higher, if that makes sense. It's kind of
Yeah.
which option you want to go for. Like if I was to put one of them in my side for 3 games and like leave them there, who do I think is more likely to get kind of a 10 or 15 pointer? I would say Smith Rowe. But if you say you have to keep them into your side for the next 15 game weeks, I think then it becomes a much harder debate.
Okay. And advice for Anthony Robinson owners, Lewis?
Oh, I think you keep it. Yeah, I think he's like I say, I think he's got 3 assists in the Premier League this season, but he's been unlucky because like I say, he's crossing the ball and Jimenez and Munoz aren't say when you've watched Mitrovic for so long and the positions he gets into and the way he bullies centre backs and manipulates where they are, and then you watch Jimenez or Munoz, it's no. I think if Robinson was crossing now Mitrovic, he would have a lot more returns. And I also think you see the fixtures looking good. I mean, you might want to bench him the next after tonight, bench him the next 2, but then you're playing him nearly every week. I think maybe not.
Yeah, I mean, certainly Southampton at home, you'd want to play him game week 17. I guess part of the problem is people will have defensive issues, won't they, at the moment? Like Gabriel, we
Yeah.
don't probably play Sunday, but we don't know at the moment. Obviously, didn't play last night. People will have things like Rico Lewis, which is like a week on week. Like, I don't know if he's going to play, he isn't going to play. There'll be other kind of injury issues. People have Ray and Eight Norrie and seeing them concede 4 at Everton last night and thinking, I don't want to look
Yeah.
at that. So when you look at Robinson playing, obviously Arsenal and Liverpool in the next 2, I think you are tempted to look away. I agree with you. I think certainly those who have the value in him should try and hold through, but I wouldn't be buying him now either. Are you still of the opinion, like I've been, I think, that once Joachim Anderson is fit, if you're then investing new, the saving on Anderson at sort of 4.3 would be worth it?
Yeah, I mean that's probably fair. I think especially since Anderson will probably come back. If he's not back for the Liverpool game, he'll be back for the Southampton game, hopefully. So sort of aligns with when our better run of fixtures starts. And the value is obviously he's a lot easier to bench. You almost feel
Yeah,
like you need
I
to play
think it's
Robinson.
absolutely inevitable that I'm going to end up with him at some point at
Mm,
that price because there's nothing else I like in and around that kind of 4.3 bracket at all
yeah.
at the moment. And he might even with this injury at the moment, might even dip into 4.2. I think it'd be popular. He's one to really keep an eye on. Before we finish, Adam, you took 1 point from Fulham last year. Is that a concern or does it focus minds?
Um, I mean, obviously it's a concern. We don't want to repeat that, and we've kind of been granted a little bit of a lifeline with Liverpool's result last night, I guess. I think Fulham will be respected like a lot. Like the game that we kind of played against them at Craven Cottage last season was, even though we would kind of it came in and amongst a run where we had some bad results, obviously kind of the West Ham at home one as well. I think the Fulham one was the worst performance. I don't want to say of the season, but it was one of the worst performances of the season. Like we just looked
It
so,
was New Year, wasn't it?
New Year's
yeah,
Eve, yeah.
it was just after that kind of hectic Christmas schedule.
New
But
Year's Eve, I think.
yeah, it was we just didn't play well at all. So I think that will be forefront of the mind. And yeah, Fulham are not a team to kind of be taken lightly, even though I was saying earlier, like there's kind of no ill will towards them as a club. Like we know very, very intimately they're three of their kind of best players. Obviously Nelson can't play, but Adama Traore is always the profile that I hate coming up against. Like we've seen, even when we've been kind of better defensively, players of that profile and with that kind of like explosive pace have been able to hurt us. Um, so yeah, I feel confident that we'll win, but I'm not taking it lightly at all.
Okay. Lewis, who do you think win the leg?
Good question. I've got to say Liverpool, I think. Yeah, Liverpool.
Adam's face. Got it, Adam. Same question.
Um, well, I mean, Liverpool should win it from here. So if Arsenal
I'll
are
keep
going to be
you getting your excuses in.
if Arsenal are going to get the bottle job label for 2 seasons in a row, no, I'm kidding. Obviously, like there have been leads like this at this or later in the season that have been overcome very recently. So I don't think it's impossible. I think Liverpool, when they've been tested, I think my mind always just goes back to obviously Arsenal playing them. And I really feel like we kind of let that one get away from us. Like we were coming in, obviously, off the back of the Bournemouth result, Saliba suspended, and then I think we finished with I think that's when we had like Miles Lewis Skelly was playing left back, and I think Kivior had to come on as well. So we were a
They missed the
patched up
chance.
team in bad form, and they got away with a draw. And when I say got away, I really do think they got away with it. Even though it's probably a fair result on the balance of play, but I look back at that and think that was probably a bit of a turning point. Like if we had been able to hold out given the kind of context of what we were going through at the time from injuries and suspensions and the kind of narrative that was building around, I think we would have like really, really kicked on. And now it's kind of only over these past few games where we're starting to kind of get into like second and third gear. I still have hope, but I I don't know how long this City kind of disaster class can go on for. So
Do you rule him out or not?
no, I think you'd be stupid to rule them out, but I think I that's maybe that's just Stockholm syndrome more than anything else. I wouldn't rule them out, but I would say Arsenal were probably more likely to win it than City are. Um, yeah, I don't know. I think it's tough to call.
Lewis
It's
is
going to be a
shaking his
season.
head. I mean, Adam, you know that I think you'll win it.
Where so I'm interested to hear them. Where are you? I know you've kind of talked about some of the away games because you
Exactly
can't see
that.
them dropping point.
I
Is
think you
that
see Liverpool's vulnerability last night. Well, you probably wouldn't have because you'd been watching your team.
mm,
But yeah, so many vulnerabilities last night at Newcastle.
Yeah, but then
yeah,
And I
Arsenal
know, and I
also
know
in
their
St
players
James's
missing as
Park.
well, but I just don't see them vulnerabilities in your team, mate. I feel like that moment's gone for you. I think for Liverpool, they were still challenging away games. I think the next three are really important for Liverpool. Everton away, Tottenham away, and obviously Fulham at home. And I think if Liverpool win them three, then it becomes theirs to lose.
mm.
But I think they might drop some points somewhere along that path.
I think if we can get to the game, the game at Anfield within sort of like because it comes very late in the season.
It's game week 36.
Yeah, so I think if we can get there even, I like I would back us to go there and get a result if we desperately need to. But
All right. Anyway, enough of that. No one needs another fucking fever pitch film. Let's do predictions before we finish. But Lewis, first prediction for Brighton tonight.
Well, I'm gonna get clipped, but we don't lose to Brighton, so I'm gonna go 2-0 tonight, and then on Sunday I'm gonna go 1-1.
Adam.
Do you want me to predict Fulham against Brighton as well?
No, I
Or
don't care. You can if you want, but
I can
don't
predict
care.
Arsenal Man United if you like. I'll probably get that one
2-0.
right.
Well done.
Yeah.
Congrats.
Um, I think Arsenal will beat Fulham 2-0.
I think you win. This is the toughest game that you've got left this year, in my opinion, Adam. It's always one. I think we underestimate it. It's the nice day on the Thames, and they've been good at home for a long time. You have the odd ones like Wolves. It was ironic. I mentioned about Wolves, Lewis, in the preview to that. I mentioned the game you lost to Burnley last year
Yeah.
before the Wolves game. So I don't know if there's a
We lost to
mentality.
Sheffield United at home as well.
Yeah, there's a mentality issue there a little bit. But for the biggest games, yeah, you're a tough nut to crack. If you went there and won 1-0, Adam, that's a good result.
There was
Yeah,
only the Villa game where I mean that game was a car crash though. We missed a penalty, scored an own goal,
red
got a
card.
man sent off,
Yeah,
and that was actually the first game after an international break. So
which you said just before we started is often a problem for you.
yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, gents. Lewis, anything you want to plug before we finish?
No, just get on the Patreon.
Good lad. Adam?
Don't get on the Patreon. Send your money to me instead.
Do you want to put your bank details in the bio, mate?
Yeah, well, yeah. I'll take out the OnlyFans link and put my bank details
Okay,
in.
well, have a look at the bio. You can find Adam's OnlyFans page there. Thank you very much, gents. So you'll be back with me tomorrow for the game review pod, which will include a more detailed discussion on Arsenal's victory last night and Fulham's game tonight against Brighton. I've got two Clash of Correspondents for you next week. On Thursday, Chelsea versus Brentford with Gary Mantle and Tom Med. And then it's the motorway rivalry next Friday, Brighton against Crystal Palace with Sam Murray and Rory McLaughlin Dowd. Just leaves me to say thanks very much to Lewis and Adam. Good luck, gents. Cue music, please, man child.